Hello and welcome back to the When You're Podcast, the podcast for when you're doing anything. Today we're talking about when you're watching Ocean's 12. So, this movie was a good sequel, I feel. And you can't, in my opinion, I think Ocean's 11 is like the best one in the trilogy, but this is a great follow-up. I really enjoy the scenario, or like what I like about it is that they try to increase the stakes. They need to make money in order to survive instead of and they are stealing, but they're not, right? Like they have to pull a job stealing something so they can make money to pay back what they already stole, and yada yada yada. And so I feel like the movie has its own thing, but it's not really it is a heist movie, but it's also like just a movie about consequences, I guess, or just kind of about cleaning the slate. Like, we're done, we did it, we're good. Like, we don't have to worry anymore. Like, there's nothing to fear now. You know, I don't have to look over my shoulder or be afraid of anything, right? Like, I just have to pay up and that's the end of it, you know? And they have to figure out a way to do it. So, this movie was a good sequel. And I remember watching it after the first one. I was kind of like, how are they gonna, I fell right into it. I didn't, expect them to win the way that they won. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but in terms of how they follow it up, it's more so just understanding that the first one was them. I was gonna say the first one was them at like the Ocean's 11, like that one was like them at their best. But then you kind of have to think to yourself like, okay, they do get progressively. In the Ocean's 13, they do a good job there, but that one's not like it. I just feel like I enjoyed the first Ocean's 11 a lot better, or a lot more. I think that in terms of the overall story, or like what they were trying to achieve, was a lot more high risk. Whereas in this one, it's like, well, there are risks, but it's not like they're broke. You know what I mean? Like in the Ocean's 11, like you can imagine, like they're surviving, but they're not like wealthy. Whereas after Ocean's 11, it's like they have money, they can do stuff now, and they can do what they need to do. And then Ocean's 13, it's like them getting back at someone, but we'll get to that later. Right now, I just want to talk about this cast again. They got another star-studded cast, a couple of surprises. They kept on doing this. Obviously they got your favorites in there: George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon. They got Bernie Mac. It's just everybody back. But then they add Julia Roberts in there, and then Bruce Willis makes an appearance, which I thought was like, oh snap! Like, and it's weird, but it's also kind of funny. It's like he's not really a part of the crew or anything. He's more so like Bruce Willis playing as Bruce Willis, pretending to be this Hollywood movie star, and then Julia Roberts is like, quote unquote, she looks like Julia Roberts, like, but she's not actually. She's Tess, and because she's Tess, she's playing to be the movie star Julia Roberts, because they're trying to make a joke that like they're similar, but in the movie essentially what they're trying to get at here is that Tess is like a twin to Julia Roberts, who is in their actual world. But it's just poke a little fun at it. And Bruce Willis is playing himself. And I find it funny when Julia Roberts like meets him for the first time, and she's kind of like fangirling. She's like, "Oh my gosh, it's Bruce Willis," and he's just like, "Man, what's going on with you? You've been a good friend of mine," and blah 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 blah. And I thought that was a good guy move by Bruce Willis to go in there and be Do like a small little short cameo in there. You know what I'm saying? So, new characters include Catherine Zeta-Jones, who is absolutely great in this one. What's his name? The guy who plays the Night Fox. I forget his name. Ah, darn it. And he does a great job as well. You know, he's very convincing to me. It's like one of the first things I ever saw him in, but he did great as well. And they kind of work. They all work together. They you know what it does? It creates this bigger world of con artists, right? Like Ocean's 11, they're con artists. You know, they pulled off numerous amounts of cons, and in doing so, they stole $160 million or something like that. Now, because of that, they are kind of a part of this bigger world. Like, you can do a con job. And con jobs are like what Matt Damon was doing in the first one, where he was like stealing from stockbrokers who were very wealthy. He was stealing their wallets and taking their cash or their credit cards and taking a lump sum of money from them, right? Like that's a con. That's a one-man con job. And he can do that comfortably and safely if he knows what he's doing. And I assume he does. And pulling off those kind of cons and those kind of jobs gives him a pretty good living, but they're not the big deal yet, you know? Real con artists sometimes work together like they did for the Bellagio, the MGM Grand, and what's it called? The third casino, whatever. So they're a part of this bigger world. This bigger, you know, you think about Ocean's 11 as like, oh, these are the best guys in the job for it, but like there's actually other people who are just as good as they are, people who are just as good in their field. So like the tech guy, there's probably another tech guy who scams people. The explosive, you know, Don Cheadle's character who does like the explosives, or who does the kind of like the picking of the lock, or like breaking in, like they have somebody who's just as good at them. The two guys who like run around playing different characters, they got other people like that. So you can only imagine that like these are one set of guys, but there's like another team, a whole nother group of people who are capable of doing what they did. So anyways, I like this movie, and why I think it's a good sequel is because they kind of show life after. You know what I mean? Like Ocean's 11, if they had just ended it there, like, yeah, that's a great movie. That's perfect. But they don't show like, okay, they stole all this money. Now they have to go on and live a life, right? Like they pulled off a big job. They made a bunch load of money. Now, how do they live? How do they, you know, do they have a job? Do they just spend all their money? What do they spend their time and money on now that they've done this big thing, right? Because like it kind of reminds me of like action films, or like the Mission Impossible, because Ethan Hunt, you don't really see him in his day-to-day life, or like, I mean, you kind of do in the third one. Spoilers for like Mission Impossible 3, I guess. But like he gets like a wife, but he doesn't have kids, and like you kind of have to assume that like they speed up the romance process, but they don't give you the day-to-day, you know, like the everyday kind of love and joy, right? They don't show you, they don't show grocery shopping. They kind of do, but they don't show the laundry. They don't show cleaning the house. They don't show breakfast or cooking or washing the dishes, right? Doing all of those little mundane topics about everyday life that we live. Instead, they just give you the action, the flying on planes, going to exotic places, going around the world and fighting, and riding motorcycles and going on helicopters and breaking into these very high valuable places and big parties and all of these other stuff. Like they show you all that stuff, but they don't show you the life after. And in this one, they show everybody's like, quote, you know, kind of like the consequences, right? Like this is what happens when you succeed. When you succeed, you kind of like all right, I got all this money now. If I play it a little bit smart, they won't catch me. And then not catching me, I can just live my life and spend my money however I want. And they typically, they do that, you know. But this one has consequences. Terry Benedict is back, baby. And it's very... I mean, he really puts a lot of money on them, or he puts a lot of pressure on them after finding them. So this movie is like, these are the consequences of their actions, right? They did the big job. Now they're found out, they're figured out, they know who they are, their new identities and all this other stuff, right? They're caught. And now that they're caught, well, they can't just go back into hiding, right? They've already set up a life, or they have all these little things already set up in place for them to live. So, because of that, we kind of have to see, like, man, what are they going to do? We kind of get a glimpse of their own ways of living life. And some people spend their money, some people like invest it or like build a business themselves. Other people like are conservative and they don't spend any money at all, and they like, you know, live cheaply. Other people are like, well, you know, I'm just gonna, well, Saul in the movie, he's kind of like, I'm too old for this. All right. I don't care about this. You know what I mean? Which I guess is kind of like a big benefit of being older. Like a lot of the young people on there, they're like, these are big consequences for them because they got so much more life to live. And if they don't, well, they'll die. And they don't want to die young. So because of that, he's a lot more older and he's like, yeah, I don't, you know, the hassle doesn't really bother me all that much and it doesn't matter. So I'm walking away. And I guess they kind of just like, the way I see it is that like, they're hiding, but they're also kind of being themselves in a way. That's why I feel like Danny Ocean getting with Tess at the end of the movie, or of the first one, was a good choice, you know, because with all the money and stuff, he'd just be nothing, sort of. He would just kind of be a little bit empty. But with Tess, it's kind of like, it fills a void, you know what I'm saying? And they built somewhat of a life together, and I just feel like that's a cool place. So, anyways, as I was saying, revenge. Terry Benedict's revenge. So this movie is like him putting the pressure on them to not only pay back the money that they took from him, but to pay it back in interest. So Ruben, he does like the whole math of it in his mind, and I really like the way that they talk amongst each other. Like the best scenes in the movie for me are when all of them are gathered around and they're all talking to one another and figuring stuff out. So in this one, they kind of break it down. And then what they do really expertly in this one is that they talk about the last movie, like explaining it. So if you went to the movies to watch it for the first time and maybe you missed Ocean's 11, you don't have to go back and watch Ocean's 11. They kind of explain it to you there. And then if you did watch Ocean's 11, right, they talk about it, but then they also talk about the situation that they're in. So you understand the context already, and they're just kind of like, well, this is the predicament we're in now. So the way Ruben suggested it was they each owe Terry Benedict $19 million, right? So if each of them got away with like $13 million, then they have to pay back 6% interest, $6 million in interest back to Terry Benedict. And in paying it back to Terry Benedict, they'll be clean of their slate. So they're going around and they're asking everybody how much they owe. And then they go to Rusty and he owes $25 million. So he lost money, and it was because he was making a hotel, and he's like, man, dude, I'm deep in it. I'm deep in debt. So, and then some people are a lot smarter. They're like, with the interest, some people are like, I only spend like $1 million. Other people are like, well, with the interest, I owe $7 million or I owe $6 million. So It's tough, and I'm going through the numbers in my mind, and they're all talking about like how much are you short, and they're talking like I'm short 7, and in your mind, in my mind, I'm just like, okay, that's not so bad, but then I have to remember it's like they're talking about $7 million here. Like I'm thinking in my mind is like, oh, it's only 7, it could be worse, it could be 25, like Rusty, but then I'm like, that's 7 million. Like, imagine the pressure. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard enough to make $1 million, but now you have to pay back more. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. And I guess this revenge, or like the life, and it also kind of shows like the lives that they were living. So the lives that they were living were good, but now that they're caught, it just kind of shows like this is the life of like criminals or con artists or people who like steal money, is that like success doesn't last forever. You're always going to get caught. You're always going to get found out. Somebody's going to dig deep. They're going to find who you are. They're going to, catch you. And he didn't put them in prison. Kind of. I mean, they do go to jail later in the movie, but it's kind of like just like a holding place for now. But what I'm trying to get at here is that it kind of shows that when you do something bad, eventually it's going to come back to you. And when it comes back to you, well, it's not good. It's always a lot worse than the feeling of actually succeeding, or like a victory, I guess. So in this revenge, it kind of shows their genius being tested. Right? They're smart, they're capable. They robbed him, they robbed Terry Benedict. So therefore, it's got to be, they can obviously steal more money, right? I mean, they shouldn't have to, but they can. And in stealing more money, they'll get out of it, This is how real smart people are put to the test, They dig the hole even deeper. Right? Like you just filled it up, but then they get an excavator and they just claw the ground out, and they just go like, yeah, you have to refill it by hand. And you just go like, well, this is going to be tough, and we got to figure out how to do it. So that's what I like. That's when you really understand how smarter, how somebody is capable of getting themselves out. That's the true test of all of them. So now that we know the situation, Terry Benedict is coming back for them. We know, we don't know. Okay, hold on. We know what's going to happen. We know why he wants to get back at them. We know what he wants. We know when he wants it. They give him a two-week deadline. And, I mean, where is just him, whatever. So now we have to figure out, okay, how do we pull this off? How do we get it, And also, how did he figure out about us? In comes the Night Fox. The Night Fox, this guy, I mean, it's just ego. It's all about ego. It's all about like, no, I'm the best. You guys aren't the best thieves, because I guess one of his mentors, Lamarck, was kind of like, yeah, Danny Ocean and his group, they are really the best. They're the best at heists. They're the best con artists in the world. And the Night Fox was like, no, they're not. So he gives Terry Benedict where they are, and in giving Terry Benedict where they are, he puts the challenge on them, and then he's going to challenge them. I mean, he puts the pressure on them to pay him back, and then he challenges them. If you can rob this gold egg of sorts, I will pay your debt to Terry Benedict for you guys. And that's the challenge, That's where it all goes down. Now this group has to work together, okay? And you would think that like they're the best of friends, they're good pals, but as we see in the future, it's kind of like they all just split off and do their own thing. And then when they all get back together, they're just like, we just did one job together. I mean, it was cool and all, and we made some money, but like, we're not, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the friendship being tested. They did the job, but they didn't like continue to hang out or to meet up. Maybe for like security reasons. Like if they all hang out, then they'll figure out who robbed him. But now they have to figure out how they're going to pay him back. And before they figure out about the Night Fox, they have to pull off heist after heist after heist. They need to make money to pay him back in 2 weeks. And then that's when the Night Fox comes in. And Catherine Zeta-Jones pops in because apparently her and Rusty were a thing. And her father is the big top con artist named Lamarck or whatever, who has never been caught. And you just kind of see this world of like these con artists. They're cool, they're calm, they're collected, they're smart, they have money, they just know everything, you know? They have an ability of just knowing all that goes on. So now we have to figure out how to win this challenge. And that's where we get to the resolution. And the answer in the movie is, spoiler alert, I mean, this whole movie is a spoiler alert, but whatever. Some people don't like this where it's like, well, they already won, or they didn't really, everything that happened in the movie was just kind of like a big show. It wasn't real, and the heist already happened, yada, yada, yada. But I thought this was a pretty good use of it. I thought they did a nice job of it, I feel. So the resolution is Danny and Rusty, and also Matt Damon's character, they go to Lamarck. And then Matt Damon makes a fool of himself or whatever, and he gets kind of like sidelined. And Rusty and Danny Ocean go up to Lamarck, and Lamarck is like, my bad, guys. Like, I only meant to show you guys like great respect. I didn't know that the Night Fox was going to out you guys and then get you guys into this big debt with Terry Benedict and then have him challenge you to see who is the best. My fault, guys. So he's kind of like, his ego, he's got too much of an ego on him, and I shouldn't have said anything, but it is what it is. So Danny Ocean and Rusty are like, it's all good. So then he tells them where this egg is going to be and how they can get it. So the real heist began like a week ago, or like I don't know how long it took them, but like the time difference between when the 2-week deadline started and like when they got the egg, but they had to go to the train station to pick it up. And that's where the real heist begins. They have to rob the egg and replace it with a fake one that looks identical to the real one. So in doing that, they go on the train and they make like a big show of it, and they have like an exact replica of the backpack that it's in with the egg inside, and then they just swap it. And it's just that's the heist, a simple swap, you know? And I like the way that it kind of plays fun at it, you know? It plays fun on what's it called? It plays a big amount of fun in the way that they rob it or they take it. It's all big show and flashy and loud and like them fighting each other and going over the top, you know? These like very cool guys otherwise. But then all of a sudden they just explode. And then that's the perfect time to like swap it and take it and do the thing. And then finally we see the Night Fox, how he stole the egg, or the fake egg, the one that they swapped and replaced. And he's brilliant. He's fantastic. But he did lose because they got a little more piece of information. They got the real egg. And he pays them out. He pays out the amount. I don't know what the exact amount was. They have to pay back everything they owed plus interest. So if there's like 11 of them, well, yes, if there's 11 of them, and they each owe $6 million of interest, so that's 200 something million dollars plus, you know, definitely up there. And because of that, the Night Fox pays Terry Benedict, and he's like looking at the check, and Ruben is like talking to him. He's like, hey man, we paid you your money. It is what it is, you know, and we finished it. We got it all done. We're on top of the world right now. And let me assure you of one thing, okay? we are not going to rob you again. You know, if by any chance you do get robbed, this $200 million check does get robbed from you, you'll know that it's not us. It's not us. You know, we're good people. You know what I'm saying? So here's your money. It is what it is. It's over. And then they cut to the Night Fox, who's going to obviously steal the check and get his money back. So in the end, Terry Benedict loses again. And that's what I like. That's what I enjoy. Seeing the guy who thought he was smarter than everybody else wasn't actually. He just got a good tip from somebody else who wanted to. It's all a big circle. So the guys at the top, the Ocean's 11, are at the top. Then it's Night Fox, and then I guess Terry Benedict's at the way bottom. So the way that it all plays out is the Night Fox heard from Lamarck that Ocean's 11 were the best con artists, or just Danny Ocean, because of the job heist that they pulled on the Bellagio at the casinos. So then he goes, that's not true. I want to challenge them. So I got to sink them in a deep, deep hole to see if they can actually pull it off. Then when they actually, he tells Terry Benedict where they are. Then once he tells Benedict where they are, which is a rule that he broke that rule, which is between cons. Like if you're both part of the game, you don't rat each other out. Okay. But he broke the rules, and that's probably also why Lamarck helped him out. So it's all about the Night Fox's ego. He gave Terry Benedict where they were so that Terry Benedict could put them in debt, and then they would accept his challenge for him to pay it. And then if they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. And he believes that he's better than them, so he knows that they were going to lose. He was going to win, and all this other stuff. I'm just blabbering on at this point. I think I already said all this, but long story short, Ocean's 12 was a good sequel. I think the dynamic between Brad Pitt and Catherine Zeta-Jones in the movie was fun. She makes a fool of him, sort of. They have like this beautiful reunion with her and her father, and they kind of like end up as a couple together. Danny Ocean still has Tess, and everybody walks away free men from the situation. And Terry Benedict is without his money again. So all's well that ends well. And I really like this one. I feel like it was a good follow-up. They did a good job following it up. So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. Go watch Ocean's 12 and Ocean's 11. Well, I mean, I guess you could watch them all three of them back to back, but I just, go watch Ocean's 12. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.